Your Dipladenia isn't dying from too much sun. It might be dying from something happening inside the pot, something you can't even see. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to tell the difference between heat stress, water stress, and a tiny pest that thrives in exactly the weather we're having right now. You'll also know what to check before you touch a bottle of fertilizer. I tested 3 things side by side this week. Morning sun versus afternoon heat, an exposed container versus a protected one, and whether spider mites were quietly involved. The real answer surprised me, and it has almost nothing to do with fertilizer. I'll show you exactly what I found in a second. Let's clear up 3 things fast, because these mistakes cost people their plants every August. Myth 1. Yellow leaves do not automatically mean magnesium deficiency. That diagnosis only fits a specific pattern: older leaves, yellow between the veins, veins still green. If your leaves don't match that pattern, magnesium isn't your answer. Myth 2. Full sun and heat tolerance are not the same thing. Your Dipladenia can handle direct light. What it struggles with is afternoon heat load, a completely different stress. Myth 3. Spider mites don't only show up on neglected plants. Hot, dry air invites them in, no matter how well you're caring for your plant. So if it's not automatically magnesium, and it's not automatically too much sun, what is it? There are 4 real suspects: heat load, container temperature, moisture consistency, and spider mites. Usually it's not just one, it's 2 or 3 working together. A lot of you commented last month asking why a plant that looked perfectly healthy in July suddenly crashed in August. This is exactly why. Nothing about your plant changed, the weather did, and these 4 suspects all get worse together in peak summer heat. Let's go through each one properly, because the right fix depends on which one is actually happening to your plant. Suspect 1, sun versus heat. Here's the distinction almost nobody makes. Sunlight itself isn't the enemy. Your Dipladenia actually needs strong light to keep blooming. The problem is what afternoon sun does. It stacks radiant heat, evaporative demand, and container temperature all at the same time in the hottest part of the day. I compared 3 setups this week: full morning sun, extreme afternoon exposure, an afternoon with some protection. The plant in extreme afternoon exposure showed the most stress, not because it got too much light, but because it was absorbing heat on every surface at once, with almost no recovery time before evening. That's an important distinction to hold on to. Sunlight and heat load are not interchangeable. But here's what almost nobody checks next. Suspect 2, container temperature. This is the piece I think matters most, and it's almost invisible if you're not looking for it. A dark, exposed container can run significantly hotter than the surrounding air, sometimes hot enough to stress the root zone even when the leaves above look fine. Here's why that matters below the soil line. Those fine, hair-like feeder roots near the pot walls are the ones actually pulling in water and nutrients. When the container itself gets extremely hot, those roots near the container wall can take the stress first, long before you'd ever notice anything wrong by looking at the leaves. Once that outer root layer is damaged, the plant's whole water pipeline gets weaker, even if you're watering exactly the same as always. I measured air temperature, container surface temperature, and root zone moisture side by side. The exposed container ran noticeably hotter than the protected one. I'm not going to hand you a universal number, because that number changes with your pot, your material, and your climate. But the pattern held every single time I tested it. If your pot sits on concrete, against a wall, or in direct afternoon sun with no relief, your roots may be dealing with a heat problem your leaves haven't even shown you yet. This is also why 2 identical plants in the same yard can behave completely differently. One's in a light-colored ceramic pot on grass. The other's in a thin black plastic nursery pot on a sun-baked patio. Same species, same sunlight, completely different root zone reality. A few simple fixes can make a real difference here. Slide that dark nursery pot inside a slightly larger, light-colored decorative planter, the air gap between the two adds insulation. Keep the leafy top in the light, but shade the container itself with a nearby plant or a small barrier. And lifting the pot slightly off hot concrete with simple risers reduces the heat being transferred into the container from below. So if it's not just heat in the air, what about water? Suspect 3, moisture consistency. This isn't about watering enough. It's about watering consistently. A container that dries out completely and then gets soaked creates a cycle that damages the fine feeder roots responsible for actually taking up water and nutrients. When those roots are damaged, the plant can react as if it's under drought, even if your weekly watering total looks reasonable on paper. Under that kind of stress, the plant can also increase ethylene signaling, which is involved in the process that causes flowers and buds to detach. In simple terms, the plant starts cutting its losses. Flowers and buds are expensive to maintain, so under stress, it may sacrifice them to protect the rest of the plant. This is also why I water it every day doesn't always mean it's getting consistent moisture. A quick daily sprinkle can wet only the surface, while deeper parts of the root zone still dry out. When you do water, water slowly and thoroughly until excess water begins flowing from the drainage holes. The goal is to rehydrate the full root zone, not just the top layer of soil. And there's one more thing that thrives in exactly these conditions. Suspect 4, spider mites. Hot, dry conditions are especially favorable for spider mites, and their damage can look a lot like heat stress or nutrient stress, yellowing, fine speckling, bronzing, and a general decline that's easy to misdiagnose. Here's the test. Hold a plain white piece of paper underneath a leaf. Gently tap the leaf. If you see tiny specks on the paper start moving, that is a strong sign you're dealing with mites rather than a nutrient problem. This is the piece most people skip entirely, and skipping it is exactly how a mite problem gets misdiagnosed as a fertilizer problem for weeks. If the test comes back positive, don't panic. A firm spray from the garden hose aimed at the undersides of the leaves can knock many of them off right away. If they're still hanging around after that, a properly labeled insecticidal soap can help control them. Apply it according to the product label, preferably when temperatures are cooler and the plant isn't sitting in intense heat, so you don't add more stress to the leaves. So here's what I actually want you to do in order before you add anything to the soil. Step 1. Check your root zone moisture history, not just today's surface. Push a finger a few inches down. Has this pot been swinging between bone dry and soaked? Step 2. Check your microclimate. Pot color, what's near it, pavement, a wall reflected heat, and how much unprotected afternoon sun it's actually getting. Step 3. Run the white paper mite test on a few leaves, especially the undersides. Step 4. If yellowing is still unexplained after that, check the roots themselves. Firm, healthy-looking roots are a good sign. Dark, mushy, or foul-smelling roots point toward a drainage or root health problem that needs attention before you assume the issue is nutritional. Step 5, and only step 5, consider nutrients, and even then, match the pattern first. Don't guess with Epsom salt. Confirm before you treat. I want to be a little more specific about that last one, because it's one of the most common mistakes I see. Epsom salt supplies magnesium and sulfur, but it doesn't fix every cause of yellowing. If your plant's real problem is heat stress or damaged roots, adding more soluble salts isn't the solution and can add another layer of stress to an already struggling root zone. Save it for a situation where the yellowing pattern genuinely points toward magnesium deficiency, not as a first response to any yellow leaf you see. One more thing, because I know you're gardening anywhere from zone 5 to zone 10, and your conditions are not all the same. If you're in a hot, dry climate, think Southwest, moisture swings and mite pressure are probably your biggest risks. Watch those first. If you're in a hot, humid climate, think southeast, container and radiant heat still matter, but you'll want to watch for overwatering and root problems just as closely since the air itself isn't pulling moisture out as fast. There's no single rule that fits every zone perfectly, but this 5-step sequence works no matter where you're gardening because it starts with observation, not assumption. That's the part most advice online skips. And if you already added fertilizer or you already tried Epsom salt before watching this, you didn't ruin your plant. Just pause, run through these 5 steps, and adjust from here. Most of this is completely reversible once you know what's actually going on. You don't need more products sitting on your shelf. You need to know what you're actually looking at. That's the whole difference between guessing and gardening. And honestly, it's the difference between losing a plant you love and catching the problem in time. So tell me, out of heat, water, container temperature, or mites, which one do you think is affecting your plant right now? Drop it in the comments and I'll help you narrow it down. And next week, I'm testing whether shade cloth actually fixes this problem or makes root zone moisture worse. You'll want to see that one.